Welcome, and thank you to all who are able to join us for this special live broadcast. My name is Natasha Patel, and I'm the Director of Career Services at Emory Law. This presentation is part of our ongoing digital learning platform sponsored by the Office of Alumni and Constituent Engagement. As our world is becoming increasingly digital, we are focusing efforts on bringing lifelong learning to a variety of digital platforms to meet the needs of our alumni, students, parents, leaders, donors, and friends. Two pieces of housekeeping to note. This presentation is being recorded and will be sent later today to everyone who registered. Second, please type your questions in the question section of the platform, and we will get to as many of the questions as possible after the presentation. Today, we are incredibly grateful to be joined by J.D. Costa, Emory Law Class of 2009, partner at McGuireWoods, who will be moderating for us today. Our panelists are Abby Larimer, Emory Law Class of 2008, Senior Associate at Morris, Manning & Martin, Sebastian Voth, Emory Law Class of 2009, Special Trial Attorney at the IRS Office of Chief Counsel, and Michelle West, Emory Law Class of 2002, Director of the Institute of Legal Continuing Education with the State Bar of Georgia. We are incredibly thankful that they are volunteering their time today to share their experiences with us. At this time, I will turn it over to J.D. Costa to get us started.
Thanks, Natasha. So I appreciate everybody joining today, and thanks for the opportunity to speak to the group. I can remember in 2008 vividly being a summer associate when Lehman Brothers folded, and that was kind of a scary time for everyone. So hopefully we can give you guys a little bit of insight from our experiences graduating into an uncertain economy. And so to get us started, I thought we could just go around, and Natasha gave you a little bit of background about what we do, but maybe we talk about how sort of the current economic environment's impacting our work currently. And so I can go ahead and kick it off. And so like Natasha said, I'm a partner at McGuireWoods in our private equity and M&A group. And as you can imagine, there's not a lot of appetite currently to go out and explore new M&A opportunities, particularly with just the uncertainty of performance that companies are facing, and whether that performance is going to rebound quickly, and whether we're going to have a sort of second wave and how that's going to impact things. So, we've got some deals that are going currently, but it's, there's a slowdown in the future, but it's been a pretty big scramble of late with all the stimulus packages that are going out and helping clients navigate that, along with capital raises and employment matters to keep them afloat. So, Abby, speaking of employment, maybe it's a good segue for you to jump in there.
Hi, so I'm Abby. I'm a senior associate at Morris, Manning & Martin, where I practice in employment. And my practice, I do some assistance to what people in JD's position do. We help on the employment front for with labor and employment matters that come up in the M&A context. I also, probably about a third of my practice is in employment litigation, then the other third just doing employment counseling on HR matters. So it has been crazy, and it has been up and down. And I know lawyers always say, you can't predict what's going to happen in a day, but I mean, we went from in March, we started fielding questions. Can I, make my sales associate travel, to this conference? And then 3 days later, it was, furloughs and layoffs. That's been sort of an ongoing thing. And then, at the end of March too, there's been some, legislation. We talked about PPP loans that have had, dealing with employees, the number of employees that people have, different sort of leave requirements. So it has been crazy. And it's funny, I was thinking back to law school finals and thinking, okay, not saying I ever did this, but maybe crammed at the end, tried to just like learn a law in 3 days and then go write about it. And you might think like, I'll never do that, but that has been a lot of what employers have been doing recently. So it has been exciting. In some ways, that's probably putting it very generously. I mean, it's also probably been, I think, one of the more stressful times for a lot of us, just when you maybe have, questions about what's going on, but in the meantime, your clients are calling constantly. And I think we've all had a lot of days that consist of 20-minute calls with very stressed out people, and then it's just back to back for like 8 hours. So that's a lot of what we have been doing, but still have kept pretty busy during this time.
Sebastian, what are you seeing at the IRS?
We have approximately 1,500 attorneys that are working remotely. Now, in my case, I've been working from home pre-pandemic 2 to 3 days per week, so the transition has been pretty seamless for me. Just to give you some context, we litigate cases before the United States Tax Court. How does an individual and a state or a business end up before the tax court? Is they get audited. For whatever reason, they disagree with the IRS, and they have the opportunity to file a petition with the tax court, and then the IRS attorneys handle that tax court case. Now, right now, all of our current trial sessions have been canceled, and the court is looking into the possibility for the first time into conducting virtual trials. So it's kind of new territory for all of us. But I view this break of trials as an opportunity for incredible trial preparation.
Now, Michelle, how are things at the state bar? A little different probably than what we're experiencing, but I'm sure, still not the normal.
Yes, it's a little different now because since the pandemic started, I guess around March 13th when things started to close down, the whole state bar staff, which is 100 or so, began working at home. But one of the major things that happened was this basically happened right around the CLE deadline, which was March 31st. And so we had to turn all of our programs into live streaming programs or on-demand programs so that you guys could actually meet your deadline timely. And so things have shifted because we're trying to determine, what's going to happen with new regulations. How do you fulfill both your online and your in-person requirements? Because you guys will soon learn that you need 12 CLE hours each year. But we're trying to work with our members to ensure that they are actually able to meet the CLE requirements while we are sheltering in place or staying at home, slowly integrating back into the workforce.
Yeah. So that's a good segue to our sort of first question is really how are we meeting our clients' needs during this crisis? And so, a lot of us are working from home, and whether we're technically able to go into the office because legal services are essential, it's a completely different way of operating. So Abby, how is this working for you?
So, yeah, I mean, again, it has been a little nuts. I did not do a lot of remote work prior to this, like maybe the occasional weekend, but pretty much we were, very office-based. And so I have, transitioning to working from home has been a bit of a challenge, not only with technology, but also just, self-discipline, making sure I actually get dressed in the morning and get up and start working at a normal time instead of getting, sucked into doing laundry or something. We've been using Zoom a lot of Zoom client meetings, which has been kind of interesting. I've even got clients in the UK that, now I've never seen them before, would probably have never met them. We've been able to talk on Zoom. I've also done a Zoom mediation for a case I had out in California, which now I'm wondering if save my client so much money, if that's something that we'll be, doing in the future, even when everything goes back to normal. So it really has just been an adjustment. And I think also still trying to maintain some personal boundaries with work. Again, in the employment front, we've been pretty nuts, and people are wanting to talk at all hours, even on Sundays. And I'm still trying to say, okay, I need to take some time off, have a normal weekend, and not just be on the clock all the time. And then it's just been, trying to help people. It's very unprecedented. There's a lot of questions coming up in employment that we just don't really have. You're used to being able to say, okay, this law, there's 20 cases, and here we're just like, I don't know. We're getting tons of questions about unemployment, which actually normally we really don't do a lot of work in unemployment because frankly, it's not worth paying an attorney most of the time. So suddenly we're all like, okay, I've handled I get 2 questions about employment a year and now I'm doing a full week of that. So just trying to, crash course, be sympathetic with your clients. Again, I know all my clients are just so stressed out right now. So trying to help manage them and manage their emotion too when there's all this emotion going. So it has been a bit of a challenge, but I think it's just, I think we're starting to get a little bit more used to it now. I think, if I had been able to work remotely before, it probably would have been a little bit easier to sort of transition into that. But, we're all hanging in there. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you're saying is probably going to be pretty instructive to folks that are going to be doing, some level of virtual internships or even, that might be coming, into the workforce working remotely some or all of the time for a period of time. I know for myself, I've got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. So the first month or so was pretty hectic trying to do and my wife works. So trying to do online learning, got a 3-year-old that you can't really do much other than give constant attention to, while these PPP loans are coming out and clients are wanting to draw on their revolver and the bank doesn't want to lend. And it's been incredibly hectic. I think what you said in terms of discipline is so true, and everybody sort of finds it a different way, whether that's working at night or, my wife and I have decided we'll get up at 4 every day and we'll work until 7 when the kids get up and we're uninterrupted because we know we can't get sort of a full, however many hours in for the rest of the day. So it's been tough. And like you said, clients are, they need us a lot right now. The programs that are coming out don't have a lot of answers, so they need our judgment more than anything. And they want to talk, and they want to talk multiple times a day. And it's been interesting, but it's been a really good lesson in sort of, I think you hit the nail on the head, in sort of discipline and work-life balance. And, I have probably learned that I have no desire to work remotely at all, where others have probably learned that, hey, this is pretty great. I can throw in a load of laundry and fix myself lunch and don't have to commute. So it's been pretty interesting. I will say the one thing that I think has been helpful for our clients has been sort of being super proactive, and I'm sure you guys are seeing it too, where we keep referring to these PPP loans, but that's been one of the biggest headaches I think everybody's facing. And it's, they put out new FAQs every 4 or 5 days, and clients aren't necessarily monitoring, and they don't know how to respond, and they don't know when they should be paying attention. So sort of getting in front of the client saying, hey, you need to focus on this, or hey, this came out, let's have a discussion about it, I think has been pretty helpful for them. So, all right, that's enough probably about us and our practices, and we can shift to what this group probably wants to most to hear most about, and that's how you get a job or keep a job right now. So Sebastian, I'll ask you the first question. Did you have a job secured when you graduated, and if so, how'd you make that happen?
Yes, but it took a lot of hard work. I ensured to continue to study really hard to ensure I could graduate with honors, and 2, I went all out with my field placements. And just to give you some context, this summer between my 2L and 3L year, I worked at Turner's legal department. Thereafter, I did a field placement at Coke, and I've used that field placement at Coke as an opportunity to, okay, how can I secure some letter of recommendation from an attorney at Coke for whatever future job that I apply for. That field placement was amazing. We had different Coke attorneys give us presentations every week about different practice areas at Coke. And so I did that. And then I did my last semester, I did the field placement at the IRS. And I also approached it very seriously now. And, you know, I was given a bunch of cases, and I asked for the opportunity to try a case as a student at the U.S. Tax Court. And I was given that opportunity. And I worked really hard. And then after the trial, several IRS attorneys said, hey, if there's an opportunity, we'll recommend you. Now, usually by this time, you know, all of the so-called the honors hires are hired at the IRS because they did the summer at the IRS. So that there was no current opportunities for me. But what I did is I you know, during spring break, I visited my family in California. And I just set up informal meetings with, you know, different IRS managers in some of the field offices in California. One of them really liked me, and she actually, you know, I just had a conversation with her, went to her office, and you know, after us having, you know, good reports, she just, you know, presented me to the entire office. And then shortly thereafter, you know, a month before graduation, you know, I got an offer from the IRS. And obviously still at the IRS, it's been an incredible blessing, and I'm very proud to work there. But you know, I do want to make it clear that when I took the field placement at the IRS, there was no path to employment, and so instead I viewed it as an opportunity. How can I forge a path and create an opportunity during these difficult times? And that's what happened.
Is that common with field placements, in your understanding, that there is no, it's an experiential thing and there's no intended path to employment? And I know, Michelle, you did some field placements too, so feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I did a couple of, I did some field placements while I was at Emory. I did in-house with Delta, the Delta department, and I also did some work with legal aid. In addition to those, I guess, experiential positions or volunteer positions, I clerked, well, I had some paid, but I also clerked at Sullivan and Cromwell one summer, and I did some work for the Executive Office of Immigration Review. So some of them were paid and some of them were unpaid, but they were different things that I did while I was in undergrad. And basically being able to do the field placements kind of led me to my first job, because I did some time at Atlanta Legal Aid. And it also, doing the different field placements and different summer positions that I had, I was able to determine that I wanted to do some nonprofit law and not take the field of government and firm work initially. And so I think they're very beneficial. They give you some background so that when someone feels like they're hiring you, they're not hiring someone who's green and haven't had any experience. Also, they're able to pull from the work that you've done during your field placements to actually, you know, you're able to figure out what's your strong suit and your strong points, and you're able to convey that information to a future employer. So it gives you background, work in the field, and just really great experience that you would not otherwise have. So not only are you benefiting the employer with coming in with experience, but you're also benefiting yourself because you have the opportunity to figure out what suits you best, what type of environment as far as firm, organization, or in-house work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Abby, thinking back to sort of 2008, 2009 when we were graduating, a lot of folks were pretty anxious, and a lot of folks were concerned that the job that they were taking wasn't maybe their perfect job, or it had changed from the job they initially accepted. So curious your thoughts on sort of your first job and your career path sort of after that.
Yeah, great question. I know there was, you know, so much anxiety in my class when we were graduating, and it definitely was not, you know, when you go into law school and you think about graduating and what it's going to be like, and it really just turned out to be, you know, very much not that. So my first job, I don't even think I had it when I graduated. I can't remember at this point, but I worked for a very small civil litigation, general plaintiff civil litigation firm, Indicator, which is also another way of saying that I spend a lot of time answering phone calls, screening personal injury cases, and photocopying medical records. I remember like getting my bar results and then immediately having to go back to photocopying, and I was like, really, this should change. And no, that wasn't my dream job, but I also, the attorney that I worked for, is still one of actually my best friends, lifelong friend. I got so much experience too. I was able to do a direct examination at trial, which, you find a lot of even, litigation partners that don't have that. So then after that job, I was on doing plaintiff side work, all litigation in a general practice. And I just thought, but I knew I wanted to get into employment. I'd done a field placement at the EEOC. I just loved the area of law. So I kept, looking for jobs in employment. Employment, fortunately, can be a bit of a recession-proof area. We just busy all the time because people are crazy and they're doing crazy stuff, and then they get fired and they can't find new jobs, and so everyone sues. And then when M&A deals are going, there's always issues with transferring employees, and depending on what kind of deal you're doing. So I knew I wanted to get into employment. I kept applying. I applied. I found a great job. They had a very vigorous application and interview process. I think there were like 6 interviews. Went to everyone. We had to do like a memo. Got to the end. They picked the other guy. They did not give the job to me. About 6 months later, they were hiring again. So I reached out again, submitted my application. That time they brought me in for one interview and hired me. So that was how I got my second job. So then I worked there, plaintiffs litigation again. You're just sort of, here's a case file, you've got a deposition next week, like good luck. And you're doing this a few years out of law school with people doing it, 20 years. So got through it. I think there were a lot of days that I was like, you're just an actress playing a lawyer, taking this 30v6 corporate deposition with, 10 people who've been doing this for 20 years in a room, and you'll be fine. And so then stayed there, started looking for another job. I did a ton of networking. I was actually at a networking event, ran into the managing partner of a firm that I'd litigated against. We'd had a very contentious overtime case that dragged on for like 8 months. Talked to him, he said, we really liked litigating against you, and now we want to hire you. So I interviewed with them, ended up getting a job with a case I litigated against. And I think it went to, they were just said, we appreciated that you were a professional. We were, impressed with your litigation skills. So yeah, we're going to give you a job. And then there had actually been other firms that I litigated against when I started looking again. When I came over to Morris Manning a few years ago, that was also a big change, having done employment litigation almost my whole career, and then coming into a practice that had a very heavy corporate base. And I remember when I was interviewing, at this point out of law school, like 10 years or something, but they asked, okay, are you going to be okay if you're coming in doing corporate work, taking instructions from a first or second year associate? And I was kind of like, I don't know, but thought about it and said, that's right. I wasn't like born knowing corporate law. So went ahead and took the plunge, and it's been great. Litigation's been an amazing background for a lot of questions that come up in the deal context. People are always paid wrong. So they're always like, what's going to happen when we buy this company? Everyone's paid wrong. So and now I feel like I've got a pretty good understanding on it. When I was going into meetings, people are like using terms. I'm like, I have no idea what you guys are even talking about. Like Googling stuff all the time. But fortunately work with a lot of supportive people who are like, there's no dumb question. Well, I can see in their face that they're like, really? We just hired her? But, and it's been great. MMM's been a great fit for me. And yeah, I feel like, yeah, this is, hopefully where I'll be for a while. I'm really enjoying it and love my coworkers. Was it at all the career path that I thought I would take when I got out of Emory? Not at all. But I feel like I'm in a very great spot with it now. Feel like I'm no longer, I get questions and I can feel very confident in my answers to clients, and like I'm really telling them and really getting to help them with a lot of these tricky issues. And especially right now, that's paid off more than anything. I think just, with all the high stakes and everything that's going on in the employment realm now. So.
Yeah, sounds like you can end up in the right place even if your first job's not your dream job right now. Michelle, you've
Absolutely.
not been at the same place the whole time either, have you?
No, it's been 18 years since I graduated from Emory. So if someone had told me that I would end up where I am now, I would say, how on earth would I have gotten there, right? So I kind of reach back and say, thank God for field placements and, doing stuff during your summers, because the field placement at Atlanta Legal Aid basically showed me that I was really interested in doing nonprofit stuff. So my first job out was at Georgia Legal Services. And I did that for about 3 years. And thank God for Georgia Legal Services, because after that, I started my own firm for about 8 years. And because of doing work at Georgia Legal Services and not having sufficient staff in order to draft everything and do everything, you basically do everything. You have limited paralegal assistants, so you figure out everything. And so basically, when I started my own firm and I was bumping into lawyers who were starting their firm, they would say, how do you know that? And I was like, oh, wow, I have skills and knowledge I didn't even know I had, because I worked for Georgia Legal Services. So that basically propelled me my 8 years of having my own firm, where I had somewhat of a general practice, but I did mostly family law, immigration, juvenile work. And I will never forget my first, I would say I was working from home, and then I started my practice, and I got my new office and an assistant. And I remember being served with my first brief that was basically about this thick, because it had all these exhibits. And it was from a really large law firm for an international child abduction case that I had decided that I was going to just help them, kind of. It was some volunteer work through a shelter that had said I would help them, because I have a Bachelor's of Science in Foreign Service. And so basically they couldn't find anyone who knew anything about international law. So that was kind of like one of my first cases in my introduction into private practice. And we went all the way to the 11th Circuit with that particular case. And so after practicing for about 8 years and wearing a lot of hats and ending up with a associate and 3 paralegals, I started doing work with the Georgia Association for Women Lawyers as far as volunteer work and doing programming for them. And I really liked doing volunteering and doing programs for attorneys. I didn't know that until I joined an association. But in doing that, I eventually ended up at the bar as a director of the Transition into Law Practice program. And what did I do with that? I did the same thing that I was doing for the Georgia Association for Women Lawyers, but now I got paid to do it. So I ended up working for the Transition into Law Practice program, which new lawyers will go through. It's your mandatory continuing legal education and mentoring program for your first year. So you'll soon find out about that with the bar. So I did that for about 5 years. And then about a year ago, I became director of the Institute of Continuing Legal Education, because I knew so much about programming from doing it with the Georgia Association for Women Lawyers and the Transition in the Law Practice program. So had someone said, put that together for me and tell me where you're going to be in 18 years, I would be like, well, I'm going to be working for a firm, and I'm going to be doing immigration and maybe some like family law from immigration. And that's what I'll be doing. Wrong. So that's just to say that wherever you start, you're not going to end up. And just know, while you're going through it, if you're like, oh God, this really sucks, just get through it, because you will. I don't know how it happens, but trust me, you will actually end up where you should be. In a place that makes you happy. But you have to be true to yourself. And you have to be authentic in what you're choosing in order for you and for your career. So just have that passion in there, and you'll end up where you need to be.
Yeah, I think Sebastian and I are probably in the vast minority of people who started and have stayed at the same place since law school. But what I'm hearing is, because of the economy, you may not get your perfect job, your dream job right out of school, but whether it's field placements or just getting out there and grinding and getting experience, get experience in the short term for sure. So, well, so here's kind of an open question for everybody, and maybe we'll start with Sebastian, but I do want to get everybody's take on this because I think it's an important but broad one. So take it wherever you want to go. But so we all graduated in a down economy, a significantly down economy. So what advice would you give to folks that are pursuing internships or are graduating into this economy, whether they've got a job, they have a job, it's getting pushed back, they have a job and their employer said, we don't know what we're going to do, or any other category of person. So, Sebastian, we'll go to you first.
Sure. Number one, let life surprise you and be open-minded. And I'll share my personal story to illustrate. I grew up overseas in Argentina. I moved to California when I was 17. And even though I went to a bilingual school, English is not my first language. And so I always thought, you know what, I'm never going to be a litigator because not being a native speaker is going to be a huge disadvantage for me. That's number one. Number two, then in law school, I said, well, you know what, I hate accounting, so I'm not going to do any tax law. But then the professors at Emory showed me, wait, no, like tax law is so much more than accounting, and it's incredibly interesting. And I ended up taking 4 tax classes at Emory, and to my surprise, I get an award for I get the tax award at graduation. And now I'm a special trial attorney at the IRS. So and before Emory, I worked in international sales operations at Turner for several years. And if you had told me I'd be, a litigator at the IRS, I would have said you're insane. So definitely let life surprise you and be open-minded. Second, think about how you can perceive the current situation, right? So you can arguably divide our decision-making process into 3 steps. We perceive, we decide, and we execute. And what you choose to perceive, you can use that to your advantage to rig the decision-making process. So perhaps you perceive this current situation as completely unfair. But I personally view the term unfair as a disabling word. So instead, perhaps consider perceiving this situation as an opportunity for you to pursue paths that you would have never considered otherwise. Third, really think about what some of the professors have told you at Emory. So and develop relationships with your professors, and definitely talk to those professors who are also in private practice to gain more insight about what it's like to practice in a particular field of law, and how can you become a better candidate. Fourth, definitely, I try to read a lot of books per month, and definitely try to read a lot to broaden your perspective. It certainly, I feel, it's given me a huge advantage at work. 3 books that I highly recommend are, number one is Principles by Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio is the founder of the world's largest hedge fund, and it provides invaluable work and life principles that I think are very applicable for the current situation. 2 is Essentialism by Greg McKeown, and it's essentially the disciplined pursuit of less. And third, for those getting you ready for work or in the future, is Great at Work by Morton T. Hansen. It's basically about how top performers do less yet achieve more. Now, at whatever point you're too busy to read a book, you can just Google the summary of Principles by Ray Dalio. It's a short outline, and it'll give you invaluable tips for how you want to approach certain difficult life situations or how to be great at work. Then also, I want to share in preparation for this panel, I reached out to 2 partners. One is from a litigation boutique firm in Beverly Hills. The other one is from a prominent firm in downtown LA. I also got in touch with some recent law grads from USC and Penn that we recently hired at the IRS. And I also talked to our recruitment office at the IRS. And I just want to share with you a few of the tips and strategies that they conveyed. One of them goes along with the theme of this panel is even if you can't pursue your dream job or what you perceive as your dream job, definitely experience will count a lot. So to give you some examples, let's say you want to be a tax attorney, but that's not available, consider being a revenue agent. Let's say you want to be, a white collar litigation attorney, consider being an FBI agent. A lot of those have JDs. Sure, you'll be overqualified, but getting invaluable experience in areas of the law that you're interested will only help you. Second, don't shy away from opportunities and stay engaged. Third, if you can afford it, volunteer. Fourth, look to areas of the law that are likely to grow in light of the pandemic. Fifth, I thought this one was interesting. Offer to blog for a firm for free. Check out whether their blog is or their newsletter is updated or not. And then this will be a resume builder, but also it will help you, establish connections. And then the other one that I got from some of the partners was like, get better at your technology skills because that'll make you self-sufficient. You won't need a legal assistant, and you get to help the partners, the older partners. So that'll put you in good terms. For current students, what I heard was, obviously continue to excel in your courses, but also really develop relationships with your professors. So, if we just get lukewarm, letters of recommendation, they won't suit you well. But if you really develop that relationship and you can show, this X student really excelled in my course and here's why I recommend, that'll really help you. And then obviously take courses that are also targeted to your prospective employer's area of law. And then finally, from a personal perspective, I'll close with, try to think, what can you do during the next 3 to 6 months to ensure that you can look back upon this time as a productive time that you treasure. And that's all I have for now.
That's pretty good.
I took
Well,
notes.
what about you? If Sebastian didn't already say it.
I took some notes. Well, first of all, I would like to say be open, right? And what I mean by be open is you never know where an opportunity may lead you. And sometimes that may even be agreeing to volunteer for like 10 hours a week somewhere, right? Because once you volunteer, you open up other relationships. And not only are you opening up office, someone else who may be looking for.
Michelle, you froze on us a little bit. Maybe go back. You were saying be open.
Yes.
And
Okay. So I said, I was telling you guys to be open. I apologize for that, but be open. And what I mean by that is that volunteer, right? And what happens when you volunteer? And when I say volunteer, I'm not saying go volunteer somewhere for 40 hours a week, but determine what a particular office or a particular organization needs are and what project you may be able to work on for them. And that may be 10 hours a week. But why I tell you to do that is because what you're doing is that you're nurturing and you're creating relationships that you might not otherwise have. And when you build those relationships, not only have you come in contact with those people who may be able to assist you later on, but they serve as a mouthpiece for you outside of the office. They may hear of something that you may not otherwise know of. And so what you're doing is basically you are expanding your circles of influence by volunteering somewhere for 5 to 10 hours a week. So just be open to what opportunities may present themselves because you never know where they will lead. Secondly, I think that you have to think outside the box, right? Kind of similar to what Sebastian said. You want to do this type of job, but what will give you the experience to actually get there that can benefit you in the long run, right? So if someone, I'm trying to find something really fast, but if you're working for the FBI, you actually will develop the skills that you may need for the next job. So just think out of the box and choose things that can help lead you to where you may want to go, or just choose things because you never know that if you get into doing that work, that may be something that you truly enjoy, and you would have never known that had you not had that experience. So be open, think outside the box, and you always have to remain positive. And by that, you make sure that you're doing things for your self-care, right? And you're doing things that where you're remaining authentic to yourself. But practicing law, no matter what you're doing, whether you're practicing law, whether you're working with lawyers, whether you're running, a continuing legal education program, as I do, you still have to take time out for yourself. And don't be so down on yourself, because this may be a tough time. And also be a shoulder for other people, give a support group of lawyers, be a shoulder for those people, and just be, a support system for yourself and others. And the way that you do that is to really take time out for yourself and take care of yourself, and don't be down on yourself during this period.
Abby, what's your advice?
Oh my gosh, it's tough acts to follow.
Yeah.
And I think, kind of sort of echoing one thing Michelle was saying about, not being down on yourself. I think that's very important. And to remind, graduating in the middle of this pandemic, that does not have any bearing on your ability as a lawyer, how good of a lawyer you're going to be down the line. There's a lot of, I think, clickbait out there. Workers are never going to recover from this situation. And I know it's easy, and I tended to get caught up in a lot of that when I was sort of, in my first few years out of law school. There's a great study. There was a New York Times article about it last year, and I'm not even going to remember the name of it, and I meant to, but feel free to email me, and I would email it, send it to you. But it was actually a study that people who encountered adversity at the beginning of their career actually not only caught up with other people, but tended to have better careers going forward. And then I think they were saying, you learn empathy. And I feel like even what I've gone through, but the skills, even at a, general litigation firm, I think have made me a much more well-rounded lawyer and a much better lawyer than if I had just sort of been pigeonholed into doing corporate employment work from the beginning. So, definitely look that up and just keep that in mind, and don't let it get you down. I think being positive is very important. And that means not only, I don't think it means being happy all the time. I think you have every right to be frustrated with what's going on, but being positive in that, okay, it will be over, and it will eventually, you will end up where you should be. I know I got so sick of hearing this. Networking has played a huge part in my career. At, not only getting jobs, making friends, surprisingly, and maybe this just goes to what a nerd I am, but a lot of my best friends here are other employment lawyers that we met through other groups. Even now, when you get a job, if you're planning on making partner or sort of progressing, most firms want to see not only, sure, a lot of people can sit in an office and bill a lot of hours, but can you get out there? Can you get speaking engagements? Can you get referrals? My network has just been invaluable. I went to a lot of I've been very involved in state bar organizations, and a lot of times you get a leadership position just because you go, and then you get a leadership position and people are like, oh, you're this expert because you're the chair of the employment group. And I'm like, yes, I am. That is me. So just go to stuff. I know networking's super awkward. If you ever want to go to an employment thing in Atlanta, reach out to me. I'll probably be there. But keep in mind also, everyone at a networking event feels super awkward and uncomfortable. You're not the only person. Why am I here? If you do have a job, I think, and some of the work for our younger associates has slowed down. We have a first year who has proved herself to be completely invaluable. She has been listening to podcasts. There was this new Families First Coronavirus Response Act that came out, and we did a webinar, I think within 48 hours of it coming out. And this first year was listening to podcasts, reviewing the law, and actually answering questions for me, the partners that I work with, because she sort of made herself the expert on this. And we've actually still been going to her. So it wasn't billable work. It was probably really frustrating to her to be putting a lot of time into it, but finding ways that you can make yourself valuable in a non-billable context if you're at a firm, showing that initiative, I'm going to go out there and review this law, and she's sending us articles in the morning, and maybe it's something that I've already seen, but the fact that she's out there and looking is just awesome. So there's probably a whole bunch of other things. I think, you guys have covered it a lot too, but I think just sticking with it, being frustrated, but don't let it, get you down or discouraged from eventually being in the practice of law. There were times I thought, I'm not sure I'm going to keep doing this anymore, and now I just can't imagine doing anything else. So,
yeah, well, that's great advice from everybody, and so that the advice we heard, I think, is great. And I'm not going to repeat it for sort of my advice. So I'm on the recruiting committee for our firm, and so I guess the advice I'll give is going to be just sort of practical, maybe do's and don'ts that we've been talking about as a committee when we're going to be sort of in a partially, if not completely virtual summer class. And so things we were talking about, sort of how to set yourself apart in a virtual world like that. And I think, Abby, the examples you just gave of that particular associate sort of going above and beyond is fantastic. If you can connect yourself with a particular group that you might have interest in or think you might, and you can say, hey, I know there is a lot to keep up with now. How can I help you guys do that while you're doing all your billable work and taking care of clients? What does it look like? What can I do? I think that would be humongously beneficial. Something we alluded to earlier is sort of being disciplined, right? It's easy to maybe not do as much work or not, kind of sit on the couch and watch Netflix and kind of check in when you need to, or sort of seem like you're available, but treat it seriously. Get dressed. Just because there's a partner that you've been on Zoom conference calls with that's wearing a t-shirt doesn't mean you should wear a t-shirt. Just because I've got a scruffy COVID beard is probably not a good reason for you to grow a scruffy COVID beard. So treat it like you are going to the office as much as you possibly can, and take it seriously, because I think that will be a differentiator pretty readily apparent for a lot of people early on, particularly. So, well, thanks everybody. So Nicole, if we've got any questions from the group, that's kind of everything we had, at least initially, to run through.
Yeah, we've got several questions that have come through. The first one is an Emory College grad who's looking to start looking at law schools. Do you have any advice of things to keep in mind or consider when looking at and applying to law school at this time?
Michelle, do you want to take that one?
Well, God, it seems so long ago, but just based on what I've seen with new lawyers, I think sometimes people get caught up on what they did before when trying to make the decision to go to law school. And I'm sure you've heard by now that doesn't matter, because what you will find is sometimes what you did before actually helps you in law school, and it helps you, it may be able to help you find a job thereafter. But just getting ready, I would say take, of course, the courses that you need in order to get yourself ready for the LSAT, because I'm assuming that this person hasn't actually applied. But just do whatever you need to do to get yourself ready for the LSAT. And when you are looking at schools, make sure that you are looking at schools that will benefit you, not necessarily looking at a school because of its name, but also looking at the school and determining what you can get from your studies. That's very important, and it will go a long way for you in the future.
That's really good. And I think I would add one thing, is don't go to law school if you're doing it because you're concerned about getting a job and are trying to find something to do to fill your time, because it's a lot of hard work and it's incredibly expensive. And you will be much better served going to get practical work experience, and you can always go back to law school if you really want to do that. So I would not use it as sort of a place to sit for 3 years while the economy gets better.
Great point.
We've had another question that's come in. I find that despite the immense changes that have taken place due to COVID, my practice is busier now more so than ever. How do you remain motivated when the pressure to bill outweighs the realities outside of your office?
Abby, that looked like that hit home.
Yeah, that's a great one. That again, I think it's just going back to the self-discipline, and I mean, I think it almost distracted me. Like at first, everyone's like, okay, work's all slowing up. And I'm like, people are like, what are you doing that you're home all day? I'm like, working 12 hours a day and then sleeping. Like, what are you talking about? Everyone's like, oh, are you organizing a closet? I'm like, what? No, what? And then finally then I did get to that point. And yeah, and then when you don't have like all, everything like kind of slowed down a little bit, and then it was a struggle to keep motivated. I mean, I think I work with a good team and have good coworkers that, we were all kind of feeling the same pain. And then just, trying to keep up with like doing time entries right now. That's been, just other administrative tasks that you have to do. But I think, and then also just saying, okay, this is a pandemic. It is a bit of a, still just trying your best. I did take a PTO day. I have, very, very, very rarely taken those in my career, but just a couple weeks ago on a slower day, I was like, I'm just taking today off. And that actually did really, really help me like sort of refresh and come back the next day and not just feel so frazzled. So, but I just think that's a challenge. I think it's something that we're all working through at MMM, not only in my practice group, but we also have a COVID-19 task force. So a lot of us that have been very involved in COVID-19 matters, our real estate, hospitality, general litigation. And I think it's been a common theme, from everyone about how to stay focused. So really just, relying on, your coworkers, that's really, helped me get through a lot. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. And sometimes people come with like, something is just not urgent, and it's like, really, like, do you know what's going on right now? But I think, yeah, just trying to stay the course, do the best you can, and cut yourself a little bit of slack too. We may not all have the same productivity and billing that we normally can when we're in an office, but I think we're all just trying to do the best that we can right now.
Yeah, I'd say from our perspective, mine in particular, I think what you said about PTO, it's incredibly important for people to just take a deep breath, because this is incredibly stressful. One thing I've taken a lot of solace in is we get a firm-wide voicemail from the chairman of the firm every week, giving us an update, and every week he acknowledges how difficult this is on everybody, but in particular, those of us with little kids at home and working parents, and it's tough. And so I think people, I'm assuming this question came from someone at a firm, they talked about billable hours. I think, there are practice groups like insolvency in our employment group, and even our debt finance group that is going crazy with these loans, that are going to have okay years. And there are others in sort of, I think my group will end up being a slower group towards, the middle of the year. And I think firms recognize that productivity for everybody is not going to be there. I don't know if the genesis of the question is from someone that's in a super busy group and is having trouble staying motivated, or just having general difficulty staying motivated, and the sort of billable hours looming over their head as a result. And I think it's okay to take a deep breath, just stay in touch with colleagues, talk to people you trust, and that give you, the right answer, or the answers that you trust. And, I think I'm hopeful that firms, at least any firm I'd want to work at, is going to be understanding that this is a tough year, and everybody's got different circumstances, and sort of mental well-being is something you should take care of, and take care of yourself, and don't let that fall to the back burner of billable hours. Certainly.
Thanks so much. We've had another question come in from someone who's just graduated from Emory Law. They have an offer at a big law firm, although their start date is unknown. They've noticed that some other firms are giving incoming associates the option to defer their start date for a year and to do pro bono work during that gap year for a stipend. If my firm offers something similar to this, should I take it?
I mean, I'll give my personal opinion. Yes. If you wanted to work at a big law firm, and you're going to have some ability to get paid, and you might have to wait a year, then yes. I think so. When we all came out, most of the big firms, or were either deferring a year, deferring 6 months, or cutting salaries, which, was sort of that salary cut followed through, sort of ended up being sort of a lost year by the time sort of you made it far enough down the road. But if that's where you want to be, then yes, because it's going to be very difficult to go find a job at another big law firm that you don't already have some relationship or some type of offer with. I don't know if others have thoughts.
I think that sounds great. And I don't think, I'm like, I would do that right now. I don't think that's gonna, if you're worried if that's gonna have any impact on your career, like 5-10 years down the line, I don't think so at all. I mean, I think that, pro bono work is great. I think you get wonderful experience and sort of, in ways like exposure to clients that you're not going to get doing billable work right off the bat. And I mean, I think that sounds like a good opportunity.
I think this is going to be the last question for us. We've had a lot of questions come in talking about technology and how a lot of businesses are transitioning to Zoom and similar platforms. What do you all think about some of the security breaches that have come out in technology as it relates to your industry right now?
Sebastian, is that one you can field?
I'll just say at the government, we're always behind. So, and we're very careful, obviously, because we deal with, sensitive taxpayer information. So, I can't even email, opposing counsel information about our case. So that's just to give you an idea of, in order to protect taxpayer information. So, so for us, we're always behind in that area, but it's because we have to protect taxpayer information. So I'll defer to someone else, on this particular question.
How are you guys doing virtual? Are you doing virtual calls, webinar, or sort of WebEx?
Oh yeah, so we're doing WebEx primarily, and just like you mentioned with your firm, our chief counsel, who's in charge of the 1,500 attorneys, is doing weekly town halls, and that's been incredibly gratifying, and really has brought. We have different divisions at the IRS, and it's really brought everybody together nationwide. But yeah, primarily it's all been through, WebEx or obviously a lot of phone calls and email. But and with respect to different, actors that we have to deal with, we're still mailing out letters. We're still, dealing with them over the phone, and so that hasn't been an issue. It's primarily, since most of us litigate cases, will we get to the point where we can do virtual hearings and trials in the near future?
Yeah.
I know there's a possibility they're looking into, there's a Zoom for the government, so they're looking into all of the security aspects involved with that.
Yeah. The mandate at McGuireWoods is don't use Zoom to the extent you're going to talk about anything client related because of the security breaches. We it's a great platform in terms of it just runs more smoothly than most. It's got a lot of great features and the backgrounds are fun. But we're having a call with our summer associates later on this afternoon, like a virtual happy hour, and we'll use Zoom because people want to put on the backgrounds and sort of have a good time. But we can't talk about client stuff on anything that's not secure. I think WebEx is what we've been using. So.
We're password protecting everything on Zoom. And that wasn't something we were doing. We were just like sending out an invite, and now they're like, no, you have to do that. So. Yeah.
All right, Nicole. I think that's it.
I was just going to say that the state bar is hosting most of its annual meetings for the bar. They're being done through Zoom currently.
Yeah. Well, I think that's everything, Nicole. I don't know, Natasha, if you wanted to close us out, or I'm happy to.
Yeah, thank you. Students, if you're all on here, thanks for participating. And again, there are several virtual lunch and learns all throughout the summer. As the panelists said, this is a great opportunity for you to network with alumni throughout the summer in a very easy context. virtual setting from your own living room. So please use these opportunities to connect with other alumni. But yes, Katie, you can have the final word. Just had to plug that in.
Great. Well, I hope I speak for the rest of the panelists when I say, please reach out with any questions. If something you didn't get answered, we're all very much happy to talk and give back. As Dean Rosenzweig told me when I was in law school, don't always be a taker. And so I think we're here trying not to be takers. So take us up on it.
Thank you so much, guys. This has been a wonderful presentation. Thank you for everyone who tuned in. The recording is going to be sent later today, and we will have contacts for our presenters in that email, so look out for that. And please stay in touch with all of our upcoming digital programs at alumni.emory.edu/digital. Thanks so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Bye.